Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat.
Welcome to Alpha and Omega Ministries, and we are delighted that you are here today. And now our sound works, and I want you to know this is the second time I've done this because the first time it didn't have any sound. So we love you all out there. And I want to begin today with an encouraging word from the Lord from the Haftorah portion, which says in Isaiah 40:26, "Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things." So this is speaking of the stars and all of creation, who brings out their host by number. Every night, the stars are in the sky, and we do nothing to cause that to happen. God does everything. If we had the kind of trust in him to bring out the stars, we don't even think about it, do we? We just know he's going to do it. If we trusted him that way for everything that we need in our life, would that make our lives easier or what? Wouldn't it? He brings out the stars. He's gonna care for us, right? Okay, so that was different than the first time. And he calls them all by name. By the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one is missing. How encouraging is this? He's taking care of everything. Our Creator, who also knows us by name and knows the very number of hair that we have on our heads. That's how much he loves us and takes care of every detail of our lives. He's in control even when it seems like everything else is spiraling out of control. Our job is to focus on him and his faithfulness and goodness and his power. So look up and remember he is here. He is with us. Be encouraged. He lives right inside of us. He never leaves. And a verse in our Torah portion goes on to say in Deuteronomy 4:35, "It has been clearly demonstrated to you that Hashem alone is God. There is none beside him." So this is good in English, right? But in Hebrew, it's great because those words, "it has been clearly demonstrated," in Hebrew, it says, "Ata, you, ha-re ata l'da'at." So that means it's been shown to you. That's what it says in English. But in Hebrew, it means there is a deep, intimate connection to you and God, and to God and us. And he wants this deep, intimate connection. This is da'at. It means knowledge, but it's not just book learning knowledge, right? It's knowledge like a husband and a wife have of each other, as it says in Genesis 4:1. Now the man yada, that's this word, da'at, his wife. That means a literal, intimate connection. That's what he wants. So he wants us, it actually says we're required not to just know about God, right? Anybody can know about God. You can read the Bible and learn about God. But we're supposed to forge this deep connection that is so intimate, we can't be separated from him, right? So our task is to know him as the Almighty One who hangs the stars in the sky, but also as that faithful, loving, powerful one who lives in us, to hear that still small voice. What do you have to do when you hear that voice? You have to be quiet, right? You have to stop depending on yourself and your own power and your own creativity and your own brilliance, right? We can't do it all. He doesn't want us to. He wants us to depend on him and at the same time do what we need to do because he's with us. It has to be this deep, intimate relationship of the one who provides for us daily, who hears and answers our prayers, who gives us weapons to fight our spiritual battles with, to know him as the God who has good plans for us, and to know that he never fails, never. And the one who directs history. If he directs history, can he direct our paths? And that he's given us his very son that lives in us. He's the living word. So stay focused on him. Look up, and he will keep us in perfect peace if our minds are stayed on him. Look up. So today our Torah portion is Va'et Kanan, which means, and he pleaded. And we're going to cover Moses pleading, and we're going to see what he's seeing, because the Lord is showing him some things. And he's seen land, and he's seen prophecy, and then he's reminding the people of what is good. What is good? How would you answer that question? So Moses continues with the rebuke that started last week, and it's the longest rebuke in the Bible. It actually goes on for 4 chapters. So he is not happy with the people, and we're going to begin today with God's answer to Moses' pleading. So we're going to hear the answer, then we're going to go back and hear why he was pleading. Deuteronomy 3:26 says, this is God's answer to Moses. But Hashem became angry with me because of you, and he did not listen to me. So what is Moses saying? Well, number one, it's you guys' fault. But number two, Hashem didn't listen. That means Hashem didn't do what Moses was asking him to do. And that made Moses upset, and that made God upset with Moses. So it was mutual, okay? So what was Moses pleading with God to do? And he carries on. Hashem said to me, it's enough for you. Do not again speak to me anymore about this matter. Okay, so whatever this matter is, God doesn't want to hear about it anymore. He's done. Deuteronomy 3:23. So now we're going to back up and hear what Moses was asking God to do. What made God so upset? And Moses says, I pleaded with Hashem at that time, saying, oh, Adonai, Lord, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your hand that is strong. So Hashem has shown Moses these amazing things that he can do, but Moses has seen something. What? For what power is there in the heaven or on the earth that can do like your deeds and like unto your mighty acts? So Moses knows God in this power, but he's asking for something else. And the very first word, in fact, the name of our Torah portion is Va'et Kanan, and it means, and he pleaded. When you look at the word Va'et Kanan, it means, Lord, be merciful to me. Show me your favor. God, I need this compassion. This is Va'et Kanan. He's pleading. And the interesting thing is, Kanan is the root, and it also, Kananina, is one of the names of the Messiah. And so he's saying, show me the compassion of Messiah. You're Elohim, right? Show me the compassion of Messiah. And so he says, you've begun to show your servant. What has he begun to show his servant? Oh, Deuteronomy 3:25. Okay, here's where it starts. Deuteronomy 3:25. I pray, let me cross over. Which words we accent, all right, are the important words. He's saying, let me cross over and see. So that means he's shown Moses something, but he's shown it to him in the spiritual realm. So Moses has seen it, and it's been so great and so awesome that he's still pleading with the Lord. Now that you've shown me in the spirit, let me cross over into the land and see these places because they're so incredible. So now it says, when we see you have begun to show your servant, God was showing Moses the land, if we go back to Deuteronomy 3:25, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan and those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. Those are the three things Moses wanted to cross over and see it in the physical, more than see it in the spiritual. So the Lord is showing him the land in the spirit. He's showing him prophetic events that would come about in these places. And so what is the good land beyond the Jordan? It's all the beautiful farmlands that would be so fertile and that would grow crops that are unbelievable. More than any place in the world, it's fertile and it produces. Then that's the good land beyond the Jordan. What's the pleasant mountains? That's Jerusalem. So God has shown him the temples, and he has seen their glory and their majesty, and he's seen them get destroyed. Okay? So this destruction, he's going, you know, he only knew the tabernacle, but now he's seen these temples in their beauty and in their destruction. Then he saw Lebanon, the place where the cedars of the temple would come from. And this was good, right? It's a good thing to have the cedars of Lebanon come to build the temple. But Lebanon has so many linguistic clues, and this is what we're going to go into. Let's see why Lebanon ended up where it is today. Lebanon was the place that provided the cedars for the temple, but today it's the home of Hezbollah. Why? It's one of the proxies of Iran, which wants to see Israel taken out forever. Why do they want to do that? They want the memory of God, the God of the children of Israel, wiped out so that it can't come back. That's their goal. And so we have these linguistic clues that we're going to look at, and you're going to see some stuff that is incredible. So remember last week we had the word Lavan, and it talked about the white bread, and they were complaining about the white bread. Well, this word Lavan can mean white. In our modern day vernacular, we think of white as good usually, and we usually think of black, which is the opposite of white, as bad. But not so in the Bible. White is just referred to as a color. And so I want to show you how this word Lavan, which is the root of all of these words that we're going to go through and lead us somewhere. So in green, you see all these same letters in every single one of these words, because this word Lavan is the root of all of these words. And so, okay, so sometimes this noon is long. It's long when it's at the end. It's another shape. It's this shape when it's in the middle of the word. It's shorter, but all of these are the same root. Okay. So where am I? Lavan is the root, and so we're going to look at this color, white. That's the first meaning of this word. And Psalm 51:7 says, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter," that's this word, "whiter than snow." So here, whiteness is good, right? It means that we're clean. We have no sin. It's been washed away. So that's a good thing. But Lavan can also be associated with judgment. All right, let's hear this. Joel 1:7. "He has laid my vine waste and my fig tree ruined bare. He has stripped it and thrown it away and made white its branches." Uh-oh. Now we see white associated with judgment. The branches were stripped of the bark that protects them. Now they've been laid bare. They're white, so they can be attacked and they have no protection. That means judgment is coming. All right, so now that word Lavan begins to morph into something that's judgment. Let's look at Numbers 12:10. The priest shall examine the sore on the skin of the body, and if the hair on the sore has turned white, Lavan, okay? What is that hair associated with? It's associated with leprosy, a skin disease that's bad, that nobody wants. So now we see Lavan white is not good. It's bad. It can also be a feminine word meaning bricks. And if you think about the bricks when the children of Israel were in Egypt, the bricks had a bad connotation because the bricks are what they used to make their slavery even harder. Remember when they said you're going to have to go get your own straw and do all those things? And Exodus 1:14 says, and they made bitter their lives with bondage, hard and mortar and brick. And there's the word. And that's this word right here. You see Lavan right in the middle. And in all manner of service in the field wherein they made them serve with harshness. Okay, so now Lavan is associated with the harshness of slavery because of the brick making. All right, so you see all these things. Now, if we're ready, I want to show you a quick video from Fox News this week to show you what's going on in Lebanon. Here we go. We'll pray it's the right one. Yep. Oh, if you can lip read. Well, wait a second. It's worth the wait.
To the Middle East, this is a new map of the current assets that are really here and around the region.
Look at all the ships in this region that they've sent, warships.
Given the current escalation, Austin also ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group to speed up its arrival to the Middle East. Now, Iran is rehearsing military drills on its border near Iraq, exercises that are set to last until tomorrow. Now, as Israel is preparing, much of the focus really has been centered around Iran's strike on Israel in April when it launched out 300 rockets and drones. Now, Israeli media here this time say that it would be different.
It might be an additional different type of weaponry. Maybe the Shihab missile, which takes about 15 minutes to get there. The big question is, if the Lebanese and Hezbollah will shoot.
That's the big question.
Thousands at the same time, then the alerts won't be enough.
And we can stop it right there. Did you hear what she said? Lebanon is the real question because of the number of weapons they have aimed at Israel right this minute. Their great fear isn't Iran. We saw 300 weapons fall into the ocean and not hurt Israel at all in Iran's last attack. But Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, is on the border, and they have 150,000 weapons stored. So what's going to happen to Lebanon, who has this root in it, this root of Lavan? Let's see what Psalm 29, 4 and 5 says. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks the cedars of what? Lebanon. Yes, the Lord splinters the cedars of Lebanon. So when is this going to happen? The cedars of Lebanon were used for good purposes. Like every person has a choice to serve God or not to serve God. They can use their talents and gifts to serve him or not. Every nation also has a choice. So they chose to serve when they used their resources for good. But now they've chosen to link with Hezbollah, the terrorist organization. So there are going to be consequences. And here in Psalm 29, the Lord begins to tell us that those cedars are going to be splinters. Okay, there's an attack coming. And there's more, Isaiah 2:12 and on. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall come upon everything that is proud and lofty. When Lebanon speaks of the amount of missiles that they can shoot against Israel, they are prideful about this, okay? And upon everything that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up. So this is a reference to pride and idolatry of the Amorites when the Bible was being written, and in a forward-looking way, it was in reference to Hezbollah, who the Lord knew would come at the end. So, and then the verse continues, and upon all the high mountains and upon all the hills that are lifted up, and upon every high tower and upon every fenced wall. So when is this happening? It's happening, as this verse told us at the beginning, for the day of the Lord of hosts shall come. That's when this is going to happen. We have to connect the beginning of this verse with the consequences of this verse, okay? So he tells us this is going to happen in the day when the Lord of hosts is about to come. Lebanon is going to get devastated. This is huge, okay? This is telling us the day we are living in. This war has begun. We just saw it on the screen. We know that Lebanon is launching rockets into Israel every single day. And they respond in like fashion, but there's coming a huge climactic end to this skirmish that's going on with Lebanon. That's what the Lord's telling us. This war has begun. It's not yet reached its climax. A recent article in Haaretz, which is one of the main newspapers in Israel, says, if we have that PowerPoint, okay, 150,000 missiles are aimed at Israel. How far does Hezbollah's deadly arsenal reach? Hezbollah has rockets and long-range missiles that reach deep inside Israel, an extensive air defense system, and a commando force, according to the latest known assessments. The Military Defense Ministry estimate that Hezbollah may fire several thousand rockets on the first few days of war and continue with 1,500 a day for the rest. Think about those numbers, okay? They're proud of their capabilities of destruction. So what do other prophets say about Lebanon? Isaiah 33:9, the earth mourns and languishes, Lebanon ashamed and hewn down. So who's going to win this war? The odds are stacked against Israel, huge. But God. Sharon is like a wilderness, and Bashan and Carmel shake off their fruits. So Lebanon, though once a land where the cedars were used to build the temples, becomes a wasteland in the day of the hosts of the Lord. That's our day. Now listen to this. Jeremiah 22:23. Oh, inhabitant of Lebanon that makes your nest in the cedars, how greatly to be pitied shall you be when what? Pangs come upon you, the pang as of a woman in travail. When you hear those words, your ears should light up, right? Because the pain of a woman in travail tells us this is the time of the birth pangs of Messiah. The war we are watching unfold in Lebanon every day before our eyes Today we see Hezbollah shooting rockets at Israel every day. Every day. When this war comes to its climax, what's it going to tell us? The Lord's return is here. It's here. And the sages agree and say, when this war happens, when it comes to its full fruition, the return of the Messiah is imminent. They believe he's here. Watch Lebanon and all that is happening in the north of Israel carefully. Lebanon is absolutely prophetic of the Lord's return. And it's already happening, okay? Do you see where we are in history? All right, and Moses tells the people to be careful, to do the commandments of the Lord. Deuteronomy 4:6-8. Keep, therefore, and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So Israel is the only nation on earth that God directly gave his law or his instructions to. God wrote Israel's history. No other nation in the world can say that. All the focus now is going to start being on Israel, and it should be. Israel is what we should be watching. If Israel would just keep the commandments, they would be amazingly blessed. Anybody want to be blessed? Keep the commandments. It's so simple, and he'll make it even simpler. Other nations would see how blessed they were and say how wise and understanding they were. You want wisdom? Keep the commandments. They would then also, all these neighboring nations that saw how blessed and wise this nation was, all the neighbors would say, well, we want that God. So if we're responding in this way to God, other people will come to us and say, why are you so blessed? Why do you have peace in these times? Why aren't you worried about what's coming? Why? And you can say, it's because the God of Israel protects me. He loves me. He's with me. He guides me. He provides for me. So it was a beautiful plan, right? But God allows choice. And Israel often chose to go another way and worship idols. So God sent his son to show how the law was really supposed to work. So this is what we're supposed to know. John 1:14-18, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And Yeshua told us what to do with this law. Matthew 5:17-18. Do not think I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I didn't come to destroy. Destroy means to teach it incorrectly, right? The Israelites had heard a lot of prophets, and a lot of the prophets were wrong because they lied to Israel. They told Israel what they wanted to hear. So when people do that, it's just going to take you in a wrong direction. So the Lord's saying, Yeshua's saying, I didn't come to teach it incorrectly, to destroy it, but I came to fulfill it, to teach it correctly. For assuredly, I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. And then he simplified the law for us, because nobody can keep 613 laws perfectly. It's never been done, all right? So Matthew 22:37-39, Jesus makes the law simple, and he says, Yeshua replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That means have that intimate da'at connection with the Lord, with your entire being and your entire life. That's our whole reason that we live. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So how simple is this? Love the Lord, love your neighbor. That's the whole law. The whole law. It doesn't get simpler. Deuteronomy 6:18, which totally agrees with what Yeshua told Israel to do. Listen to what it says, Deuteronomy 6:18. And you shall do what is right and good. What? You shall do what is right and good. Well, what does that mean? In the sight of the Lord, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the good land of which the Lord swore to your fathers, to cast out all your enemies from before you, as the Lord has spoken. So sometimes we make a lot about, what should I do? What should I do? I don't know, and I want to be blessed. And there it is. Just do what's right and good. Well, what is right and good? Well, let's see. Now, Moses taught the children of Israel the mitzvot, all 613, right? And the 10 commandments. And now he says, do what's right and good. Is there something we don't know? What does this mean? I'm going to read a story to you about a young man who discovers this verse. There was a young man getting ready for his bar mitzvah, and he had memorized the 10 commandments and the Shema and all the things that they needed to memorize, and he came across Deuteronomy 6:18, and he said, which says, do what is good and right. And he said to his dad, surely the right thing is to keep the commandments. What else could Hashem be telling us? So they sat down together to take a closer look. Do you think it's possible to keep the mitzvot, or the commandments, according to all the laws and still not be doing what is right and good? Asked his father. Is that possible? It's a great question. At that, Ariah, that's the young man's name, became frustrated, not imagining what else could be more important than the commandments. So the father began to explain about an award called the FA Cup, given to the best soccer team. Now, I'm not familiar with soccer, but this is where the story goes. Let me explain, said his father. Before you were born, in 1999, Arsenal, that's the name of one of the soccer teams, okay, faced Sheffield, that's the other soccer team. They were in these playoffs, okay? They were tied in the 5th round of the FA Cup. With 15 minutes remaining, the score tied 1-1. A Sheffield player got injured. A teammate kicked the ball out of bounds to allow him to receive treatment for his injuries. And when the game restarted, Arsenal threw the ball back toward the Sheffield side so they could start the game again in possession, because it had been in their possession when it had to be kicked out because of the injury. But Arsenal's striker misunderstood what had happened, and he ran on to the loose ball and kicked it to Mark Overmars, apparently a great player, who calmly kicked the ball in for the winning goal. Uh-oh. Wow, the Sheffield players must have been furious, Ariah exclaimed, understanding the injustice of the moment. They were. They demanded that the referee disallow the goal. But there was nothing the ref could do. Arsenal had not broken any official rules, only an unwritten rule of decency and fair play that could not be enforced. The Sheffield team did not want to forfeit the match, so they played on, and a few minutes later, the final whistle blew, and they lost the cup. I get it, exclaimed Ariah. This is an example when playing by the rules just isn't enough. Arsenal didn't do the right thing, despite not breaking any rules. Right? Get it? I want to see it on your faces. Do you get this? Sometimes we're required to do more than the commandments. We're required to do what is good and right. that exceeds the commandments, any specific law. Micah 6:8 says, He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? Just act justly, and love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. These are not difficult, right? Anybody can do these. And what else did Moses see in the spiritual vision the Lord was giving him? Moses sees this. Deuteronomy 4:25, when you give birth to children and children of children, and you will have been long in the land, you're going to grow corrupt. Oh my goodness. The Lord's showing Moses this. And you're going to make a statue, an image of anything, and you will do that which is evil in the eyes of Hashem, your God, to anger him. This is a rebuke, remember. Moses sees that the children and the grandchildren of this generation that are going into Israel are going to worship idols. He sees it. God's showing him. How is this possible? How is it possible? Well, it's really simple. The miracles that this generation going in had seen and heard about from their close relatives, and they'd experienced those miracles, they were going to be gone for the children, because these miracles would be just history to them, not firsthand knowledge of the Lord. It wouldn't be their story. It wouldn't be personal to them. So they would not do as Hashem had told them, and they would worship idols. They'd get sucked in to the other nations around them. So how poignant is this? Are we experiencing God? We, as adults and young adults in this room, are we experiencing God and seeing him perform miracles that our children are seeing? Are we proclaiming the miracles that he does for us every single day by our provision, by the breath that he gives us, by the fact that we wake up in the morning and he's restored our soul? These are miracles, okay? You know, do you know a man named Sean Freut? Well, if you don't, he is now leading worship across this nation in all the capitals of every state. He's going to every single one. He's been sued. He's been put in jail. He's been really defamed, but he just keeps going. And his worship services in these capital places are incredible. And have you ever wondered, if you knew this man, where does this fervor and excitement come from that leads him to do this? He's just a young guy. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. His dad was a doctor who became a missionary doctor. And when Sean was about 13-ish, he took him on a trip to villages in the Amazon. And this is where Sean experienced God. Our kids need to experience God just as much as we need to experience God. And we need to share those experiences. So I'm going to read you 2 paragraphs out of Sean's book. And he said, I had never seen poverty of living conditions like these. It made me grateful for my simple hammock on the boat. Not only that, but these people battled diseases and illnesses I had never heard of, let alone experienced. I think the same was true for most of the medical team who had come with us. They had not seen these illnesses before, but God had. The power of God met us everywhere we went. Is it meeting us everywhere we go? Before any doctor, nurse, or dentist treated a patient, we prayed over each person individually as they came through the tent flaps of the clinic. In those moments, I witnessed the wildest miracles of my entire life. Things I'd only read about in the Bible and in revival history were taking place right before my eyes. I had said I believed in God before, but I had never seen him in action like this. Our kids need to see him in action. My faith multiplied tenfold right there in the midst of people's desperate need. There were too many miracles to count. It wasn't only the good side of spirituality I experienced on that trip, though. I also experienced aggressive, demonic torment, heaviness, oppression. Have any of you experienced that? It's here, and it's alive, and it's well right now in these days. A small, harmless-looking older woman walked into the clinic one day, and as soon as we began praying for her, her eyes turned blood red, and she began screaming. But her voice wasn't her voice. It was a man's voice, deep and guttural. And she struck out at anyone who came near her. Hearing the commotion, my dad, who had been outside, came in, and he laid hands on her and commanded the demon to leave. She quieted immediately and seemed relieved. However, I was even more surprised by the calmness and authority that my dad had just shown. Are they seeing us as parents respond in this way to the demonic, to any kind of situation that the enemy wants to bring across our path? Is that what our kids are seeing? They need to see this. Back in her right mind, he gave her a hug and went back to whatever he had just been doing before. I was blown away. So, this trip changed Sean's life and his understanding of who God is and the power that he wants to display today if his people will give themselves wholly to him. Completely. Our children need to experience God in his power and in his love. How are we making this happen? It's our job to walk in this power wherever we are and to teach our children. Psalm 34:11, come, you children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. That's where it all starts. Fear means respect, yes, and fear means fear, right? Because the all-powerful God, we need to fear him. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It has to be taught, though. Isn't that amazing? It says, I will teach you. It's not automatic. Psalm 78:5, for he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children. All children need to know the commandments. These are the instructions for a good life, especially the two that Yeshua told us, right? So kids don't know these automatically. Ephesians 6:4, and you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Are they seeing the fathers and the mothers as loving other people? How do we as parents show that we're loving our God? How do we train our children in these ways? Are we talking about him when we get up in the morning, when we have lunch, when we go to bed? All day long, are we talking about him? Are we reminding ourselves how important and that he's with us? So these are the most important things that parents will ever do, is teach their children. Then we are not going to see our children worshiping idols. Moses You know, I think it's funny. I think when kids are born, they ought to come with a label that says they will need instructions regarding God. They will need to be instructed regarding God. This child will need to be instructed regarding God. That's all you need to know. Teach them the ways of the Lord. That's it. So Moses had a vision, and he wrote it down for us because we need a vision. In his vision, he saw Lebanon as the place where the battle would take place that would let the world know, because you saw the whole world is involved in this war with Lebanon. Italy has sent ships. England has sent ships. The U.S. has sent ships. I don't know all the nations that have sent weaponry and everything else to support what's coming. It didn't come during the 3 weeks. It didn't come on the 9th of Av, but it is coming. Everything is poised. The Lord is holding it back for his purposes. So, because they're firing missiles from Lebanon today, we know it's already begun. Moses had a vision of how God's people can be defeated. It's when we stop putting our first love in something other than God. That's going to bring defeat to a people, to nations. Nations that are not putting their first love as God are going to be defeated. It's just, it's like gravity. It's as sure as gravity. He had a vision of how much our children need to be taught the Lord's ways. They don't just catch them. Moses had a vision about going above and beyond and doing what was good and right. Jeremiah 23:16 says, "This is what the Lord Almighty says. Don't listen to what the prophets are prophesying to you. They fill you with false hopes. They speak visions from their own minds, not from the mouth of the Lord." So we all need to be sure that whatever we're watching and listening to, if they're calling themselves a prophet, are they? We know where the true prophets are, and we can go to them. They're in the Word. Numbers 12:16, he said, "Listen to my words. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams." Proverbs 29:18, where there is no revelation, that is another word for vision, people cast off restraint. What's happening in the world today? Do people have a vision of God? No. They want to know only about themselves. What can make me happy today? Proverbs 29:18 is another way of saying that same verse. And it says, where there is no vision, vision of what? The one true God, the people perish. They die. So Moses told the vision to the people, and Joshua was one of those people. These were going in to take the promised land, and so are we. We're like that generation. That's why this is so critical to us. Joshua 1:6 and 7, Joshua says, "Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to your fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that you observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, that you may prosper in whatever you go." So be strong. How do we be strong? We stay united. God is echad, right? He's one, though he's three separate entities. He wants us to be echad as he is. We stay strong by loving others, by doing good, and by teaching our children. That's how we stay strong. Micah 6:8, he has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before our God. Okay, I'm going to close with this. Last week, I saw an incredible video put out by the Israel Guys website, and it has been taken off. It has been scrubbed from all social media. It was even scrubbed from my computer because I copied it and put it on my computer. And when I came back to send it to Noah, guess what? They'd changed the video in my computer. I'm serious. They didn't want this to be known or seen, because when you saw it, it really affected you. And it took place on the 9th of Av. And I have an article that the Lord brought to my attention last night so that at least you can see a glimpse of what happened. And I want you to see this PowerPoint. Okay, you see this man laying there? That's the Temple Mount. And there are others. I don't know how far I can get over here, but there are others laying. And if you could have seen the video, there were rows of men, Jewish men with kippahs and tzitzit on, laying prostrate on the Temple Mount. And this is what it says. Why is it provocative for a Jew to visit their holiest site? Israel's Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, ascended the Temple Mount along with 2,600 Jews on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, this week, a day of fasting in commemoration of the destruction of the temple. Jews are only allowed to ascend the Temple Mount at allotted times and are forbidden to pray or worship. Muslims, however, are allowed on the Temple Mount anytime they wish and worship without restrictions. The controversy surrounding Ben-Gvir's visit was not that he ascended at an inappropriate time, but rather that he stated his policy was to allow prayer, okay, on the Temple Mount. This statement was, listen to this, this statement was labeled by the U.S. as a provocative action. They were condemning the Jews for praying on their Temple Mount. That's not going to fly. So it was so significant because it showed these Jewish men calling out to the Lord, laying prostrate on their faces, full body. And I couldn't hear all the words because, of course, they weren't mic'd. But what I could hear was Baruch haba hu Elohim. And that means blessed is he who comes. He is the Lord. That's what they were crying out. There were other words. I couldn't make it out. Do you hear this? Do you hear this? This is so huge. When the Jewish people begin to cry out, Baruch haba Shem Adonai, we know the Lord is coming because he said it. He said, when you, Israel, cry out, Baruch haba Shem Adonai, I will return. That's what he said. Ooh. So they are crying out for their Messiah. It's begun. It's begun. And the war in Lebanon has begun. Do you see where we are? My goodness. Do you see how significant it is to be alive in this generation? I don't want you to go away from here saying in your heart that these Muslims that are doing these things are wrong. Oh, I think I forgot the big thing in this article was that the statement was labeled by the U.S. as provocative. The U.S. did not label the Arabs' actions as provocative, despite the Arab worshipers calling out, Itba al-Yahud, which means slaughter the Jew. That was okay. That was not provocative. And so when we hear these things, our first reaction is to kind of go, I don't like those people. No, we don't like what they're doing. We really don't like what they're doing. But listen to this. We have to love them and pray for them, because you know why? This is what they were taught as children. What children learn as children matters. It matters what we teach our children. So pray for them. They don't know any better. Pray that God opens their eyes and that they will see who the Jewish people are and love them. But know this, when the Jews begin to cry out, and when this war in Lebanon, which has already begun, is going on, we are so close. So close. So what does that say to us? How do we get ready? Love one another and love God with that intimate relationship. And don't stop pursuing that relationship ever. You say, I just don't feel it. Well, keep trying. Keep trying. Don't give up. Look up. We are intimately loved, and the days of his return are now. And that is our Torah portion.